treated to just a tiny sampling of the grandeur, beauty, wonder of the planet on which we live and the universe which envelops us. And I'm really glad you could join us. Stay with us. Don't click off in 5 seconds. Join us for part 2 in this an awakening series. And in case maybe this is your initial introduction, I'd really encourage you to pull up the first video, part 1, and watch it. We've all had experiences like standing on a mountaintop, being amazed at the view, or admiring the beauty of a spectacular sunset. You're going to see some of that continuing in these videos, and I hope you'll enjoy that. But it's what I want you to really pay attention to is what's being said. I think there's the important issue. Maybe you've even sat on an abandoned beach, just taking in the sights and the sounds of the restless ocean in front of you. Well, these kinds of profound experiences, life experience, should draw us to reflect, I think, more deeply about what lies behind the beauty that we see. And as you know, if you've been with these videos so far, that's where we're kind of heading with this, to pay attention to what really you're seeing out there in the world around you, in space, stars, and then we're going to go a lot deeper than that, obviously. Well, I want to explore the challenge of thinking thoroughly about things that lie beyond our surface day-to-day encounters. A lot of static out there, you're just busy, sometimes not even able to think deeply enough just by virtue of everything that's in your schedule. Understood. We'll want to explore the challenge of thinking thoroughly about the things that lie beyond our surface day-to-day encounters. And by that I mean, we have our 5 senses, the things that we experience through our 5 senses alone. But maybe there's a cautionary note in that, I should think. And from our previous awakening video, you probably noted that we alluded to having some skepticism about the issues that we see and hear. And that would certainly have to include, I would think, claims made by scientists, scholars, and even theologians. And we're going to be addressing some aspect of skepticism that's healthy, and of course some that isn't. So stay with us.
Who among us hasn't gazed in awe at the sheer immensity of the starry panorama in the night sky on a clear summer's night? As we proceed, we'll assume that you may have, at some point in your life, asked yourself some version of 3 profoundly important questions. First, we might ask ourselves, how did I get here? Then, why am I here? And lastly, of course, the most vital, where am I going? We'll also be addressing aspects of these crucial life issues. Oh, but first, we need to consider the topic of atheism as a mode of belief. What about a worldview that proclaims bluntly, there is no God? Well, the person making that bold pronouncement would certainly be called an atheist. Ultimately, we must ask ourselves, is it reasonable or logical to deny the existence of an eternal deity who may possibly exist just outside our personal realm of perception? Certainly, Mr. Spock would have found the atheist position most illogical, especially in the face of scientific discoveries over recent years. Yet many otherwise intelligent people persist in calling themselves atheists. Dr. John Lennox, Oxford professor, has made a rather curt 4-word statement in one of his books, referencing many recent astounding scientific breakthroughs. He says simply, "Science has buried atheism." Lennox goes on to say bluntly, atheism is a delusion since it is a persistent belief in the face of strong contrary evidence. So maybe it's proper that we should be logically skeptical of any rigid claims made by the skeptic atheist.
But it may be that some of you watching do feel comfortable wearing perhaps a mantle called agnosticism, even if you would not call yourself an atheist. But you know, agnosticism needs a little bit more clarification, I think, since the description may trigger different meanings, not to mention emotions, in different people. So in order to move forward, maybe we can accept a definition of agnostic as it has come widely to be known and understood. And that would be to describe a person who maybe concedes that, you know, the possibility that there exists some eternal, all-powerful being. They haven't got all of the knowledge of the universe yet, right? Maybe a possibility that such a being might exist. But then how about this for a statement we might expect from two different types? One might be the open agnostic and one might be the closed. Well, the closed agnostic might assert this.
I don't know if there's a God or not. I'm not sure anyone can know that for sure. But anyway, I don't much care either way. I don't let that issue affect the way I live my life one way or the other. I don't know whether or not one all-powerful supreme being, or God, exists. However, if you have the evidence to show me, I'd say that I'm willing to review and consider it.
Well, if you define yourself either as a closed agnostic or an atheist, and you have made a permanent life commitment there, that might well mean a life commitment to sort of a humanistic philosophy of life. Well, you should probably save yourself some time and just simply click off here, really. But for those of you who remain with us and are still open, you might just have to wrestle a little bit with some of what you're about to watch. But keep that openness, that open mind, and perhaps even challenge, as I mentioned earlier, some preconceptions that might steer your life currently. We all have them. So there just might be, for an honest seeker of truth, something new to discover that might truly make this time well spent. That's my goal in this series. And for those of you who are remaining with us and are still open, you might have to wrestle a little bit with some of what you're about to watch, quite frankly. But keep an open mind. Perhaps even challenge any preconceptions that you might have that kind of steer or bias your life currently. There just might be, for the open, honest seeker of truth, something new to discover that could truly make it time well spent for you. I hope so. There's a very thought-provoking statement made by astrophysicist Dr. Robert Jastrow. In his book, God and the Astronomers, Dr. Jastrow summed up some of his key data and interpretations by having a bit of fun at his skeptic colleagues' expense. He said this: "For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries." Well, in addition to Dr. Jastrow's book, we'll list here just a few of the many additional resources available to you on this topic. Stop the video for a moment if you would like to copy them down. For our purposes here, we'll explore just two of the numerous proofs to be found online and in a variety of published volumes on the intelligent design side of the current scientific debate over origins. We'll cover the second proof in the next video. Let's look now, though, at the first powerful argument concerning the staggering amount of pre-programmed information contained within even the simplest microscopic strand of living DNA. Complex intelligent information does not randomly, quote-unquote, evolve or simply form itself from mindless organic molecules. No, complex programmed information requires a programmer. Only makes common sense, doesn't it? In fact, to believe an enormous database of coded information in DNA came about randomly and mindlessly would be the equivalent, as one ID scientist has said, of believing that given a long enough time span, that enough tornadoes spinning through enough vast electronic junkyards would inevitably and mindlessly form, program, and then launch an enormously complex machine like the space shuttle. Well, that is simply absurd, of course. Discoveries about much of the true makeup of all DNA has staggered scientists in the field of microbiology in recent years. In a current article posted on discovery.org by Stephen C. Meyer on the topic of genetic design, he noted that DNA has a remarkably similar structure to that found in codes, alphabets, and languages of all kinds. But as mind-boggling as DNA complexity is for the traditional evolutionary biologist, it's much worse for the hard-boiled scientist at the cellular level. For even the most primitive, tiny amoeba is now understood to be a living machine composed of precisely designed permeable and semi-permeable membrane structures that take in nutrients, metabolize them, and then expel wastes, systems of circulation and respiration, reproduction, etc., etc. All of these precisely designed and efficiently intermeshing structures and systems are built by DNA coded with more information contained in them than in a vast library of books.
Well, we're getting ready to close out our second video in the Awakening series. You may remember that at the very beginning of our first video, we flashed two quotes. One was an atheist's perspective on the eternal, no creator aspect of the universe. The second was a quote from the Bible's book of Psalms celebrating the wonder of God's creation of the cosmos. We then asked the question, who's right? Our hope is that this leads you to possibly ask yourself another what-if question. That would be, what if the newest scientific data really does suggest strongly that an intelligence far beyond that of mortal man, and very likely eternal, might just lie at the heart of all the universe's existence? What might the implications of this be for my life and the choices I make while I'm here on this planet? We'll then be transitioning into a discussion on our differing worldviews and what faith is after all. We'll also be taking some riveting looks at final recorded statements of a few people who are facing their last moments of life. I hope you'll join us again for a very compelling deeper look into origins, finding meaning in living, and in discovering the likelihood of life beyond the grave. For a moment though, take a look at a few points which will appear on your screen. These could be areas that will cause you to stop and think. They may even take you outside your comfort zone that you've been resting in. I hope you will stay with us as we explore this and more in upcoming videos in the Awakening series. As we close, experience exhilaration as you watch this captivating, three-dimensional trip through the universe, courtesy of the Hubble Space Telescope and the creative people at space.com. And thanks for staying with us as we continue our journey.